February 14th, 1934. 11:58 p.m. The Rhythm Club, 168 West, 132 2nd Street. The jazz band has stopped playing. The silence is louder than the trumpet ever was. In the center booth sits Bumpy Johnson, alone, staring at a small velvet pouch on the white tablecloth. Standing over him is Pistol Polly Scarfone, a hired gun from the Bronx with 17 confirmed kills. Scarfone isn't holding a gun. He is shaking, tears streaming down his pockmarked face, his knees buckling under the weight of an invisible terror. Scarfone had come to Harlem to kill the king. He had left 3.45 caliber bullets on Bumpy's doorstep that morning, a promise of death. Now, less than 16 hours later, he is begging for his life in front of 200 witnesses. But Bumpy doesn't look at the man, he looks at the bullets. "You gave me a gift this morning, Polly," Bumpy whispers, his voice smooth as oil. "It's only polite I return the favor." Scarfone drops to his knees. "Please, Bumpy. I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know." Bumpy picks up the velvet pouch. He pours his contents onto the table. It isn't bullets. It isn't money. It is something far more terrifying. The room held its breath. 2 weeks earlier, the truce between Harlem and the Bronx was fraying at the edges. Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson was 30 years old and approaching the zenith of his power. He was no longer just the enforcer for Stephanie St. Clair. He was becoming the institution itself. He walked the line between gentleman and gangster with a terrifying grace. He could quote Nietzsche to a college professor in the afternoon and break a man's arm in 3 places by dusk. He protected the neighborhood with a fierceness that bordered on obsession. If you paid your dues, you were family. If you threatened his people, you were a memory. The winter of 1934 was brutal. The Great Depression had its teeth deep in Harlem's throat. People were starving, desperate, and cold. The numbers game, the illegal lottery that Bumpy controlled, was the only economy keeping many families alive. It was the bank of the poor. But where there is money, there are sharks. Dutch Schultz, the Jewish mob boss who had been trying to seize Harlem for years, was growing impatient. His previous attempts at brute force had failed against Bumpy's guerrilla tactics. Schultz decided to change the game. He wouldn't send an army to fight a war. He would send a ghost to cut the head off the snake. He hired an outsider, someone with no ties to Harlem, no respect for the code, and no fear of the legend. He wanted Bumpy dead, and he wanted it done on Valentine's Day, a twisted message of love from the Bronx. The ghost was Polly Scarfone, known in the underworld simply as the Postman, because he always delivered. Scarfone was a freelance contract killer who operated outside the traditional Italian hierarchies. He was devoid of loyalty, motivated only by the highest bid. He had made his name in 1931 by taking out 3 rival bootleggers in a single afternoon in a Hell's Kitchen barbershop. He was precise, arrogant, and sadistic. He didn't just kill. He liked to toy with his victims, letting them know he was coming to savor their fear. Schultz paid Scarfone $10,000 a fortune in 1934 to eliminate Bumpy Johnson. But Scarfone, blinded by his own ego, made a critical error. He didn't just want the money. He wanted the glory. He wanted to be the man who frightened the man who couldn't be frightened. On the morning of February 14th, Scarfone bypassed the security at Bumpy's apartment building on 116th Street. He didn't break in. Instead, he left a small, neatly wrapped box on the doormat. Inside were 3.45 caliber bullets, polished to a shine. Etched into the casing of each bullet were 3 letters, R.I.P. It was a challenge, a psychological game. Scarfone wanted Bumpy to spend his last day on Earth looking over his shoulder, sweating, wondering where the shot would come from. He wanted the king of Harlem to die afraid. Scarfone's plan was to strike at the Rhythm Club, Bumpy's favorite late-night haunt. He knew Bumpy would be there. Bumpy never hid. To hide was to show weakness. Scarfone positioned himself at a corner table near the kitchen exit at 10 p.m., nursing a bourbon, his coat draped over the chair to conceal the sawed-off shotgun in his lap. He watched the door. He watched the mirror behind the bar. He felt invincible. The Rhythm Club was alive. Cigarette smoke swirled in the blue spotlights like ghosts dancing to the saxophone. The smell of fried chicken, perfume, and gin was thick in the air. The clinking of glasses provided a chaotic rhythm section to the band. At table 4, the local councilman was laughing with a showgirl. At table 9, a group of sailors were spending their pay. 11:15 p.m. Bumpy walks in. He is wearing a charcoal gray suit, perfectly tailored. He stops at the coat check, smiles at the girl, and hands her a generous tip. He walks through the crowd shaking hands, nodding to the regulars. He moves toward his usual booth in the center of the room. He seems completely relaxed, a man without a care in the world. 11:30 p.m. Scarfone tenses. His hand drifts under his coat, gripping the cold wood of the shotgun stock. He waits for the waiter to clear Bumpy's line of sight. He calculates the angle. 20 feet, no misses. 11:45 p.m. The waiter moves. Scarfone starts to stand up. He is ready to end the legend. Then, a hand lands heavily on Scarfone's shoulder. Scarfone freezes. He tries to shrug it off, but the grip is iron. He looks up. Standing there is a massive man, a dock worker named Tiny, whom Bumpy had helped with a rent payment 6 months ago. Tiny isn't smiling. "Mr. Dermer, Johnson wants to buy you a drink," Tiny rumbles. Scarfone looks around. 3 other men have silently surrounded his table. They aren't holding guns. They are holding steak knives from the dinner service. They are smiling, but their eyes are dead. 11:50 p.m. "Bring him," Bumpy calls out from the center booth. His voice cuts through the music. The band leader, sensing the shift in atmospheric pressure, signals the band to stop. The music dies. Scarfone is hoisted out of his chair. The shotgun is stripped from his lap and tossed under a table. He is marched across the dance floor. The silence in the club is absolute. 200 pairs of eyes watch the predator become the prey. Scarfone is shoved into the chair opposite Bumpy. He tries to muster his arrogance. "You think you can touch me? I'm with Schultz." Bumpy calmly lights a cigarette. He exhales a long gray plume of smoke that drifts into Scarfone's face. "Dutch Schultz isn't here, Polly. You are." What Polly Scarfone didn't know was that in Harlem, the walls have ears and the pavement has eyes. Bumpy hadn't just found the bullets that morning. He had recognized the specific engraving style. More importantly, the doorman who let Scarfone into the building wasn't bribed. He was loyal. He had described Scarfone to Bumpy's lieutenants at 8,007 to 5 a.m. By 9 a.m., Bumpy had the description circulating in every pool hall, barbershop, and speakeasy from 110th to 155th Street. Scarfone thought he was hunting a man. He didn't realize he had walked into a fortress, but Bumpy didn't want to just kill the hitman. Killing was easy. Killing was messy. Bumpy wanted to dismantle him. He wanted to send a message to Dutch Schultz that would be louder than a gunshot. Bumpy had spent the afternoon doing research. He didn't look into Scarfone's criminal record. He looked into his life. He found out where Scarfone lived in the Bronx. He found out who waited for him at home. Execution. Bumpy reaches into his pocket and pulls out the velvet pouch. He pours the contents onto the table. It isn't the bullet Scarfone left. It is a small silver crucifix on a broken chain and a child's toy soldier. Scarfone's breath hitches. A sound escapes his throat, a high strangled whimper. "My associates paid a visit to the Bronx this afternoon," Bumpy says softly. "Nice apartment. Your wife, Maria? She makes a wonderful marinara. And little Anthony, he loves his soldiers, doesn't he?" Bumpy leans forward. "We didn't touch them, Polly. We fixed your leaky sink. We gave Anthony $1 for candy. And we took these, just to show you that we could." The realization hits Scarfone like a sledgehammer. While he was sitting in the dark, waiting to kill, Bumpy's men were in his kitchen, playing with his son. They held his entire world in their hands, and they let it go. Bumpy picks up the toy soldier. "You left me bullets. You threatened my life. I held your son's life in my hand, and I gave it back." Scarfone breaks. The tough Hitman facade crumbles into dust. He starts to weep loud, ugly, heaving sobs. The terror of what almost happened, the mercy that was shown, shatters him completely. "Kings don't kill the messenger, Polly," Bumpy says, sliding the objects across the table. They send him back to tell the sender he failed. 12:05 a.m. The sound of Scarfone's weeping fills the silent club. It is a pathetic human sound. The patrons watch in awe. They expected blood. They expected a beating. They are witnessing a soul being crushed by benevolence. Bumpy signals to Tiny, "Escort Mr. Scarfone to the train station. Buy him a ticket to the Bronx. If he gets off before 149th Street, break his legs." Tiny hauls the sobbing hitman to his feet. Scarfone clutches the crucifix and the toy soldier to his chest like they are life rafts. He nods frantically at Bumpy. unable to speak, mouthing "thank you" over and over again through his tears. He is dragged out of the club, a broken man who would never hold a gun again. The immediate reaction in the club was confusion, then eruption. As the door closed behind Scarfone, someone started clapping. Then another. Within seconds, the entire rhythm club was giving Bumpy Johnson a standing ovation. He didn't stand up, he didn't bow, he simply signaled the band leader. "Play something upbeat," Bumpy said. By the next morning, the story had reached Dutch Schultz. The Dutchman was furious, but he was also shaken. His hitman hadn't been killed, he had been converted. Scarfone moved his family to Ohio 3 days later and became a bricklayer. He refused to ever speak of Harlem again. Bumpy's reputation shifted that night. He wasn't just a gangster anymore, he was a grandmaster. He showed that the ultimate power wasn't the ability to take a life, but the power to spare one and own the man forever. This Valentine's Day incident of 1934 illustrates the intellectual gangster persona that separated Bumpy Johnson from his contemporaries. Men like Dutch Schultz or Mad Dog Call solved problems with explosives. Bumpy solved them with psychology. He understood that a dead enemy is just a corpse, but a broken enemy is a living testament to your power. It reveals a depth to Bumpy's character often ignored in history books. He operated on a moral code that, while twisted, was absolute. He targeted combatants. He left families out of it. By sparing Scarfone's family, he wasn't just being merciful. He was proving moral superiority. He was telling the Italians, "I am not an animal. I am a man, and I am a better man than you." The universal lesson is chilling but profound. True dominance is established, not when your enemy fears dying, but when they realize you control everything they love. If this story gave you chills, hit that subscribe button. Drop a like if you respect the chess moves of the Harlem Godfather. Comment below, would you have spared the hitman? Next week, we go inside the prison walls to see how Bumpy Johnson saved the warden of Alcatraz from a riot.